All right, good morning. Welcome back, everyone. It is Fractional Friday with my fractional real estate guru now, Joseph Cachapalia. So, morning, man.
Hey Mark, how you doing?
Good, good. So, how is everything going? What's up in the fractional real estate space? Unfortunately, our guests had to cancel last minute, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, what's going on in the fractional real estate space, man?
Yeah, oh, what's happening?
I see you. I still see you.
Sorry, I had the stream up, so I could hear you echoing. Um,
Up in the fractional.
yeah, I think the most interesting thing happening right now is what's going on with Saul's Lot and Smart Deeds in the Kanye West Malibu mansion. So, despite Matt not being able to make it here, I do want to talk a little bit about that, and I'll a little later share my screen and show you some stuff going on with that. Other than that, there is a live stream coming up right after ours where Jerry Chu, the founder of Lofty, is going to be answering some questions. Hopefully, a lot of people jump over there and ask him some tough questions because he is, there's all sorts of stuff going on Lofty on a regular basis. Lots of accusations of operating reserves being moved that shouldn't be, and things like that. So it'll be interesting. Um, I'm sure there'll be some new news that comes out of that, but that happens after this one.
It's on your channel or
No,
on?
no, on Lofty's
Okay.
own, they have their own channel.
Okay, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of news on Lofty recently, so see what's going on over there. But the guest that you did invite on, mention again what platform was he from, and you mentioned something about Kanye West's property or something.
So he is the founder of, or one of the founders of Saul's Lot, which we had him on before. He actually had some issues that time too, as far as I don't know. He called in from the car and then kept cutting out or something. So not great luck with that guess. But he's so Saul's Lot's a platform I talk quite a bit about. I really love it. I think it's very smart. Like you're buying a piece of equity in a deal. Uh, it's like exactly the sort of investment. I think it makes a ton of sense. Now he's partnered with this company, Smart Deeds, who is there. It's a separate group that flips properties um, in California, and they're like really high end properties. And so that's this connection with that the particular property that was Kanye West's former property. Um, he that they're going to you're going to be able to invest in that deal in a similar way that you can on Saul's Lot, where you're buying a forward sale of the equity, so getting some upside in that deal. But then they have this layer of like membership on top of it, and that's what I really wanted to ask him some hard questions about. And so it's unfortunate, but I want to get into what that is a little bit. What I think they're doing. Um, I don't know. I'm a little. I like the Sol's Lot base product so much, and I'm worried that this is a step in the wrong direction. But what it is, I think, is just a fantastic marketing move for them because they've had. It's obviously really interesting to say, hey, we're doing this huge Malibu mansion flip. It's a very popular property, and partnering with another company that I think has a lot of experience raising equity, maybe just privately for deals. So it's uh, I don't know. It seems like a weird fit for what they've originally done, other than it is another move to um, take a real world asset and turn it into a token basically, or a DAC in this case is what we're getting a piece of.
All right, yeah. So I saw it's like the most Googled property, right, on the internet, I believe.
Yeah, that's
So
what he says. I mean, I believe it as well, but yeah, it is. I guess it was a mansion, and I didn't know anything about this. I'm not a pop culture guy whatsoever. I mean, people make references to things all the time that I just you know over my head always. But so apparently, it was done by a very famous architect as well. And when he moved in, Kanye apparently like ruined it as far as a lot of people think, like made a lot of changes. And so part of what they're wanting to do is sort of bring it back to its former glory. There was somebody, so I was in a private call about this property with some of the people involved about a week ago, and they have like some oh, I can't think of what it's, so like a fine art type person who's going to have stuff up in there. And so it's, I think the project is interesting because there's a lot of people collaborating to make it work. I think it's going to bring a lot of attention. I just don't know. One of the things that I've seen over and over again in the fractional real estate space is some of these companies, they do things that will, because they need to increase their client base, but they aren't and I don't know that this is necessarily the case. I mean, maybe this is the direction they want to go. But often they do this at the expense of their product or their ecosystem, right? Like, I mean, I think the best example of this is Lofty. They basically have, because a lot of their early adopters are people who were just crypto people. They were people that are interested in that. They support the Algorand blockchain. They don't really even know what they're buying when they're buying the tokens on Lofty. In some cases, I think in a lot of cases, that's what is happening. And so because of that, you end up with people that maybe are attracted to products that don't make a lot of sense. You have people that are, I don't know. I think there's a big risk of attracting the wrong, making all these small moves, changing your thing to attract people, but then it turns out to, okay, now are we really even a real estate investment product anymore? What are we doing here? So that's my worry. And I had told him I was going to ask him some hard questions about that, but I'm sure we'll hear back from him on some of this stuff. It is too, I have a natural, like, just aversion to anything fancy or nice. And so, the idea of, high end, a membership that gets you access to this mansion in some way or another just doesn't appeal to me at all. So, it's also, I think, a personal preference thing going on. But it is, I like the base product so much that buying a piece of equity in a single family home bread and butter deal and being able to do that hundreds of times is so appealing to me that I'm just like, really, this project makes me a little nervous that is not going to be what we keep getting.
Yeah, I also want to bring up too that we had, in the school community, I do see more and more questions about, fractional real estate, right? So it is
Right.
getting more popular out there. People are trying to dig into it a little bit more, but I think because there's so many platforms out there, right? And I think even Zuber has a regular, Real Bricks comes on a regular basis.
Right.
But that's why I think your channel is great, right? You kind of break down each platform, what you like about them, what you don't. You're testing all of them out, and you're transparent on, oh, I like this one for these reasons. So Souls Lot, I've heard you talk about quite a bit. I mean, what attracts you, or what makes you like Souls Lot, or what's the cons of, or downside of Souls Lot in a sense?
So the downside is, if you're looking for a traditional real estate investment, that's not what you're getting there. There's no, you're not, it's not an interest in an investment property. What you're doing is you're essentially buying a piece of the equity in this home. And you're buying it at a discount to what they have to pay you out at. So, in that discount set up front, and the plan is that property is going to be sold sometime in the future. Typically it's a relatively short term, 8 months, 12 months, something like that. And so you're getting, the only risk is that the property doesn't sell and it takes you longer, or the biggest risk is that it doesn't sell. It takes you longer to realize your equity. And so, in that they're pretty good returns, even if it is held full term. But some of them I've had that, okay, we bought this equity, and what we're doing is essentially, you have a homeowner, maybe they're a flipper, maybe they're a regular homeowner. They have their property, they're getting ready to sell it. They need cash today. They don't want to fire sale the property today, so they fire sale a small piece of their equity to you. That you're getting the benefit of a deep discount, so they don't have to take a big discount on the whole sale. They get their cash today. Hopefully, it sells in this instances where it sells quickly, you get an amazing return because you get the same return regardless of how, or the same chunk of money regardless of how quickly it sells. So I've had some where my annualized return is 90+% because I bought it, it sold very quickly, and then I have some that I've been holding, and I'll probably get the 12% when it eventually sells. Um, but so I like it a lot because it's servicing a need for those homeowners, right? It's a way for them to get cash. Maybe they don't have access to debt. They want to move out. Maybe they have a couple little projects they're doing to the property. They're in a situation where without this product, probably their only option is to sell to a wholesaler and that's what Matt's background is. He was a wholesaler. And so kind of created this as a new product to help those people who really shouldn't be buying or selling their home at a wholesale price. They might only need $20,000, $25,000 in cash, some small amount of money to make that deal work. So I like it a lot from that perspective, right? It's creating a solution in the marketplace that doesn't exist, and at the same time giving us really good returns when everything works properly. And so I really just want them to focus on that, put out hundreds of these homes, and I'll be a buyer of every single one, when I do my due diligence and they make sense and there's not something I'm worried about. So far, I've bought a piece of I think I missed their very first one, but since then, I think I've bought a piece of every single one that they've put out. And I only have one that's been sitting for a while, and it's still well within its contract period. So a lot of them have sold out, fairly quickly. And yeah, so that model I like a lot. And so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's just the case of this opportunity came up. It's like, okay, it's attracting a whole bunch of attention and let's partner and do it, or if it's the direction that he's planning to take the platform. Because he also put out this new thing called Populous, which I think is what he's using to create this membership that's coming along with the Malibu mansion. And so I want to talk about that a little bit and what I think they're doing. And can I share my screen?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
Do you want
remember.
to do that now, or there's a couple questions, or
Oh, okay.
maybe?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk.
Well,
Answer.
there is one. Harrison Trade Better 99 does say, I believe that Joseph will be the investor who took down Lofty.
I don't think I'm taking it. I want to see them win. I just think that they repeatedly make decisions that are against the interest of us as investors. I don't think they do it on purpose. I think that they just don't really think through the consequences of a lot of stuff that they say. But no, I mean, Lofty has not had a great trajectory this year. I mean, if you there's a website, we had Limas on the channel one time. He created Lofty Assist. You can track how much money is on Lofty, the whole system in general, and that number has just been cratering since earlier this year. I think there's a little rebound, but at the same time, it's there's opportunities because of it.
Harrison follows up with, Joseph, are you now motivated to start your own platform?
So it is funny. I get contacted from people all the time that want to start a new platform. I've been asked a few times to be part of it. Sometimes they're just asking, scheduling calls to like just talk about like, give some feedback on it. I'm really not looking for a new job. I am. There's a couple people I'm actually talking to that I might be involved with in some way. I think that there's so much opportunity in this space, and and I think I think a lot of the mistakes that are being made are just obvious mistakes from anybody who has real estate investment experience, and could be like you could create, I think, something similar to a Lofty. And I think that's the model that people like the most is the Lofty model, but their execution is just very poor. And I think that, with 17 tweaks to what they're doing, you could have an amazing platform. And they're all like, very few of them are expensive changes, but they're, it's more a cultural change at the company or the way they look at things or, I mean, there'd be a serious shift from what they're doing now. So I don't know. I mean, I do think about it a lot, and people reach out to me a lot to talk about it, but it's something that I'd like, our discussions and our channels to have some impact on this space and make sure that help move things in a direction that's good for all of us investors. But me, like, actually starting a company and doing that seems very unlikely.
You'd have to. What if you could do it from your couch? Would you do it?
I mean, I think it would cut into my nap schedule quite a bit,
All right. So what did you want to share on the screen now, or you had
Oh,
something?
yeah. Let me see. How do I do this? Share screen. I want to share my window. Nope. Chrome. Yeah, this one. Okay, so are you seeing it's a fourplex in Detroit now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the Sol's Lot platform. So this is the base platform. Um, all of these different homes I've bought pieces of. I think, like I said, I think literally every single one of that currently shows up on the platform, I've owned a piece of, maybe with one exception. And many of them have already been redeemed, and I've made decent returns on. Some of them are still waiting. So then you see this, this visit the private club link. That brings us to this project on Smart Deed. So I'm still new to the sharing screen with this software. You see the Malibu drop on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is that project, right? This is the Kanye West, his former property. You can see they're doing this pre-launch. It ends soon. It ends today. This is why I was really hoping to talk to him about this today. But so this is right. This is the same idea, right? Where you're buying a piece of the equity, and then in the future, you'll get cashed out for some, at some set price. But one of a couple of things are making this different from the Sol's Lot deals is one, we always get the after repair value, because that's what we base our profits on, right? It's based on the future, appraisal of the after repair value that's done today. But here they're using a BPO. So that was, there's just some little things that made me nervous about this. But then what was really odd about this one is these, and this is the guy who's doing that project. I talked to him very briefly. I think he's done a number of projects out there. I want to say they said he was on Selling Sunset or some show like that. And again, I mean, I'm just not a pop culture guy. I don't know that stuff. But so this is what they're doing here. And you can see this exchange rate multiplier. This is what we're used to seeing on Lot. And this is basically the whole deal on Sol's Lot, right? Is you get this, I'm buying it at $1 and I'm selling it for $1.20 at the end of the process, right? But what they've done on this one, and I think it definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in my, and I've seen these tiered things before, right? But depending on how much you invest, you get a much different exchange multiplier. Like it goes from 1.2 to 1.3. You're investing dollars in the same project. And so, the people that are investing on the small end are really getting a much worse deal than the people that are putting a larger chunk of capital. This is really common with capital raises in the private real estate world. Like I've seen this a lot, but this is like, in my mind, a very egregious difference, right? 1.2 to 1.33, like is a very large delta. Usually they sort of explain this away when they're, most people that are doing this, by saying, hey, look, it takes us a lot more effort, time, money to raise money 1,000 at a time than 300,000. And I think that's perfectly fair, right? If your delta was like 1.2 to 1.25 was your hold change, I think that makes some sense. When you have this really broad difference, it makes, it's really that you're subsidizing the bigger investors with some of the return that could have gone to the smaller investors is how it feels, at least to a lot of the people that invest in the smaller end. But what's really interesting here is they're doing these, like, they're adding some additional benefits on, and this is partially why this, if you have 300 of these thousands, they're giving property tours, they're doing this private networking mixer. Some of these, they're giving you access to the guy, Bo, who's doing this flip. So this is one of the things I think it's kind of interesting. If I wanted to get into doing high end flips, it might make sense for me to invest in this deal, and a little bit more money, and to get some access to these people and whatnot. And I think that's the thought process. But again, for me, that's a big move away from the value is just in the real estate deal, right? And so um, I have that's where I have some reservations about. Okay, what are we doing here, right? Like, okay, we're getting a private chef dinner as part of this tier. Um, these are just things that, to me, it's just, I don't know. It doesn't it just it veers so much from this bread and butter. Like, I love this type of deal, and this, to me, I just don't understand it at all. Like, if I wanted to, I could do one of these, but I could never imagine myself doing it. Although, getting 1.33 versus 1.2 is pretty awesome. But when you do the math on these deals compared to their bread and butter deals, you're not really doing any better, and you're having to have such a bigger minimum investment, that I think these other, like, perks have to be worth something to you, and a significant amount. I think not just like this is an added, not just an added reward. But so then, and I am just going to keep rambling about this until you tell me to stop. But so then, what they're doing, one of the things that they're doing is they want to do something with this property that might not just be a flip. They might hold it, and do this, like, people just pay for a membership ownership of it. And then, if that's the case, then the early buyers would sell out to this membership group. The basic, and I might be butchering this a little bit because I didn't fully grasp how this is going to work. But basically, Matt said the base, or the worst case scenario is we just flip it and make our return. What they really want to do is create this situation where they have, people are basically paying for access to the property. And so that's what he put out this. And now they should have a new one. That's the Populist Manifesto. You see this?
Yep.
Okay, great. And so, this is, I just saw this yesterday or the day before. He's talking about this project, and it's like, you can buy into this, and this is the same deal, right? It's telling you about, the same multipliers and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm really just not fully sure. But when you read this, it's like, we're trying to make it so anybody can own a piece of this luxury stuff, and I don't know. I mean, this stuff, all, to me, is the opposite of the direction that I'm hoping that fractional real estate goes in. This feels more like consumption than it is investment. Although I think, but you are getting an investment with it. But again, like, I hate anything fancy. I'm not, I'm never the guy that I'll get takeout from a nice restaurant if I like the food there. I don't want to sit there and get the experience, right? So, I don't know. I mean, that's been my general feeling about it. Hopefully I do get to talk to him at some point and get a little bit more idea about, like, where they're going with this, because it's almost, because they talked about, like, doing private parties or events at the property, and like, that people just want to, I guess they get a lot of requests for people to just tour the property now before it's even flipped or anything. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but it is not, for me, who's just looking at the fractional real estate space as a way for people to make a return from their couch. I'm not going to a party in Malibu. And so it's just, I don't think I'm their target market, to be fair, right? But I don't know. It's hard for me to understand. Where I think this is coming from is this is how they've raised money locally before, right? Like, people are paying for access to this, quasi famous or maybe famous developer who's flipping these, or at least locally famous. He's doing these cool projects. This is it. It very much reminds me of like old school country club type deals. I'm gonna stop sharing now. Um, where you would see, uh, I've seen these sorts of things where you get these other perks for if you're a bigger investor. You get to, one of the things that they had on there is like you can share naming rights or you can like do some co-branding with it. So I think that I understand what they're doing, and I think that it works in a certain direction. It's just I think for most of the people that watch my channel and probably most of the ORAC community as well, it's not the type of deal that I think they're looking for.
Joe V does say, "What's Joseph talking about? I'm sure there's a couch at the house in Malibu."
Yeah, well, that's true. I don't think it's as worn in as mine, though. You don't understand how much I'm just part of this couch now.
I do want to say good morning to Kevin. Looks like maybe a new, hopefully subscriber, but just tuning in. So thanks for stopping by. But we are talking about fractional real estate today. Souls Lot platform. Unfortunately, our guest Matt from Souls Lot had to cancel at the last minute. But we were kind of digging into one of the most Googled properties on the internet right now. It's Kanye West's former property, I believe, and it's on Souls Lot. Anything else you wanna touch on fractional side?
Yeah, there's some really interesting news, and there's not a lot of it out there, right? There's a lot of like assumptions, and there's little snippets of video. So there's a video out there, the CEO of Robinhood talking to the CEO of Open Door, and Open Door is the big iBuyer, and they're talking about tokenization, and Open Door is. And he basically said, the CEO there's like, oh, we don't really talk about products until we launch it, but I can envision, us tokenizing everything. And so, based on that discussion and a couple other things, a lot of people are speculating that is going to be a new exit for Open Door as an iBuyer. So they'll buy your property, they'll tokenize it, and then what it looks like, and I don't know where this idea is coming from. I don't know if it's somebody got a quote from that or not. But what it looks like they're going to do is then, okay, now they own this property, they're going to sell it with owner financing to the next buyer, where that buyer rents it and then slowly buys their own tokens over time. So the more tokens they get, the more of their own rent they're paying until they just own it outright, or the more of their own rent they're receiving. I think it's a really interesting idea. The fact that such a large, that a public company, a company with so much attention is talking about tokenizing their assets. Uh, I mean, to me, that was huge news to hear that. So I think it's just really good confirmation that we're going to see this play out more and more. And there's probably an infinite use cases of selling you a small piece of a real estate deal.
That is a great segue into. So like I was touching on earlier, there is, we're both in the school community. Michael Zuber's one rent at a time school community, but there is more chatter about the fractional, real estate space. So just the other day, right, someone was asking about fractional real estate in the school community, right? And
Right.
you already answered it, but their biggest kind of questions was lack of operational control is the biggest turnoff to me. Who gets the tax benefits, and what differentiates this from a REIT?
Right. Yeah, I mean, those are all good questions, right? Or one good comment and a couple good questions. So, yeah, the lack of operational control for someone like you and me who already owns real estate, it can be frustrating, right? You can, to see some poor decisions being made at properties. And so that's why it's really important, when you're picking your platform and picking whoever's running those deals, to make sure that you're aligned with, the way they do things is the way that you like to. It's one of the reasons I like Mogul a whole bunch. I think they look at the world almost exactly the same way I do. I mean, we have a couple, every once in a while I'm like, I think they're being too aggressive with this or whatever it is, but their general thoughts on what makes sense is for real estate investment matches mine very closely, and so that's why I like them a lot. So, I think it's going to be very rare that they do something I'm unhappy with. On the flip side, on Lofty, it's controlled by committee basically, right? We have to vote on everything. And then sometimes we vote on, delegating authority to one person to do certain things. That's been my preferred method of operating on there, right? Like say, hey, okay, we're going to sell this property in real life. Let's just pick this one guy and he just gets to make all the decisions. Because, trying to do a sale where we're negotiating back and forth with a buyer and we have to submit a vote to our group every time doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I mean, I think that point is true. There's lots of instances where I'd like to have more control and I don't. Um, but there's going to be pros and cons with every investment, and that's just something that you have to figure out. Okay, am I comfortable with that or not? The question of tax benefits uh, varies greatly from one property to the next, and obviously, I'm not here to give anybody tax advice. A lot of the ones that are the SEC registered securities, they're actually set up as a single property REIT, and so you don't get any tax benefits like direct ownership in real estate, but REITs do benefit from the tax code. I mean, they have some benefit that is over and above certain other investments. Um, on properties like Mogul, where you have a more direct ownership in that property, like on Mogul, I do get a K1 for each property that I own. It's truly just like owning a piece of a real estate partnership. So last year I only had one property with them, and so I had passive losses in that entity. That's the thing, though; they're always going to be passive losses, right? As far as I can figure, like I'm never going to be able to say I own 4% of this, but that's an active, it's active ownership. So it only is really beneficial. Well, one, it zeroes out any of your income from those same types of investments. But unless I have passive gains as well, I'm not really getting a ton of benefits other than all the income I'm getting from those properties is wiped out by depreciation. So I'm not getting taxed on that. That's my personal situation. It's going to be something that you really should talk to your tax provider about. And then the third thing, how is this different from a REIT? Well, like I just mentioned, a REIT is it's just a specific, it's a selection that a company makes. Says, okay, I want to be taxed a certain way, and I'm required to pay out a certain amount of money, and we're going to hold real estate, and you have to have like a minimum of maybe 75 different owners. Like it is just a legal structure. But a REIT, the way most people think about it, when you think about private REITs and you think about public REITs that you can invest in, almost always it is a large portfolio of assets versus just buying a single property. And so, why the fractional real estate makes so much more sense to me is I can do due diligence on that single asset. I'm not doing due diligence on a giant portfolio of assets. I think that's important to me because I'm trying to use my knowledge and experience in real estate investing and spending some time doing due diligence to get a better return than just buying every single deal that this particular company decides to buy. And I mean, so for example, like I said, I really like Mogul. I'm not buying every property they put out. I probably buy half the properties they put out. If that were a REIT, I'd be stuck with the other half that I don't think are as good as the half I picked. Now, I could be wrong, but that's the decision I want to be able to make.
And like Joe V mentioned, when the questions of fractional real estate do come up, everyone always directs everyone to Joseph, right? Like, hey, this is the guy to reach out to when you want fractional real estate information. That's also why, like I said earlier, Joseph does have a YouTube channel with daily content on fractional real estate. So go check that out over there. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else on that. I know, unfortunately, our guest didn't join us, but I did want to maybe pivot towards some more. I know maybe people don't know. They only hear you talking about fractional stuff on my channel now, but people don't know about your long history in traditional real estate. So maybe quickly you can share your maybe journey there and then your thoughts on all the talk about a 50-year mortgage possibly.
Sure. Excuse me. So, yeah, I bought my first investment property in 2005. It was a duplex. I actually had been interested in real estate since a couple years earlier than that. I read, at the time there wasn't a whole bunch of internet right? I mean, it existed, but it wasn't the way it is today. And so I actually went to the bookstore every weekend, bought books. I literally bought and read every real estate book at the Barnes and Nobles by me over the course of 2 or 3 years. So I was one of those people that probably tried to learn way too much before actually owning my first one. I did try to do deals. I was in college at the time. And so had no income. So tried to do some wholesale deals. Although at the time, people didn't call it wholesaling. I ended up just losing option money on several deals and never got one to work then. Later on in life, I did a couple that worked out, but didn't really get anything for the first couple of years. After college, before graduate school, so I went to graduate school for land economics and real estate. I had a job in between just for the summer. This was 2005, so you could get a mortgage easily, right? So I bought my first investment property, used a VA loan based on this summer job that I had. I got, it was one of the best deals I've ever done. I got a rebate from my realtor. I got a rebate from my lender. It was 100% financing because it was a VA loan. And so I had put $100 in earnest money down, and at closing, I got a check for $1,500. It was so ridiculous. And I had the other side was already rented out. By the time I closed on it, the school year had already started. So getting a roommate for my side was tough. I had ran ads for a while. It didn't really work. Then I decided this was, very very outside of the box thinker when I was young. I hadn't ran into the wall so many times yet. So went and bought myself a pool table. I wanted one anyway. Put it in the living room, took a picture, and then ran ads that said my pool table and I need a roommate. And all of a sudden, there were all these people that wanted to be my roommate. So I got one. It took like 3 days after that. And so lived in that during graduate school. Moved out, hired a professional manager. I realized that's how early on I realized that I'm not cut out to manage my own properties. And so since then, I've always bought deals knowing I'm going to have a professional manager and, making sure that the numbers work with that. I bought my next place again. It was 2007 was when I bought the next one. So like a year and a half later. This was one that I moved into. At the time, you could do these 80-20 loans, right? You could do an 80% first mortgage, 20% second mortgage. Again, put no money down. I paid a little bit for closing costs on that deal. And that's it. And actually I had seller credit. So, that second deal, it was very close to no money down. But again, moved into it just for a short time and then moved out and rented that. And that was how I did that quite a few times where we'd buy a property, move into it, move out and rent it. I think that's a model I like a lot. In between my first and second deal, I got married. So house hacking with roommates and that sort of thing became not really an option. She's not as excited about that stuff as I am. Although has let me do just lots of different things in real estate. I did mostly boring stuff. Other than that, I bought a 10-unit place with some partners that I had my license. I got my license at that same time, but then I was working in commercial real estate as a day job and just used my license to do deals on the side. Between when I graduated from that real estate program in December of 2006 and when I went to law school in 2012, it was a terrible time to be in commercial real estate. I believe I had, how many jobs did I have? I think I had 9 different jobs in that time period. From companies going out of business, there were several of them that had a bunch of layoffs. I never got laid off, but I'd always see it coming and then jump to the next one. And so during that time, I worked in commercial appraisal, commercial lending, asset management, worked for acquisition for a couple of different REITs. For a really short period of time, I managed a self-storage facility. I was the on-site manager. That was really interesting to me because I had financed a bunch of some self-storage deals, and I wanted I really wanted to focus on that, and I was or I knew I was going to be unemployed. So I was like, oh, let me just go do this until I get my next job. So I did all kinds of stuff in the commercial space. Went to law school in 2012, worked as a real estate attorney for a short time. I don't know if that I've talked much about this, but I have a chronic disease. So I got pretty sick, and I was misdiagnosed at that time. And so ended up being out of work. I left the job as an attorney because I couldn't work the hours with the health that I had at the time. I mean, I still wouldn't work those hours today. Took me a little while to get that sorted out. All the while still investing in my own deals. I actually liquidated a decent amount, during the period of time where I was unemployed. Kept my license, and then once I was sort of to where I could do stuff again, we made the decision to move here to San Antonio, which is where I am now. In the interim, I had a kid, and this is, we realized, okay, this is when he's going to start school. So I wanted to be somewhere where I thought, okay, this is a market that I can be in long term, because I had moved around a whole bunch. So very much picking real estate, or picking San Antonio, was a real estate based decision. I mean, more than anything else. I mean, there were some other, personal connections here and whatnot, but it was very much driven by that. And then so since then, and that was 2018, I partnered with a property management company here in town. That's where I hung my license, and I just went to work selling, residential investment properties. Initially, I was doing all small multifamily, and then moved on to lots of short-term rentals, stuff like that. I think when I first met you, I was building a shipping container home to use as a short-term rental. We talked about that.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a really fun project that I learned a ton and didn't really make money on. But that actually got me into flipping deals with owner financing. So where I buy stuff all cash and then sell it with owner financing. Because I bought a whole bunch of, well, not a bunch, but I had bought several lots that I thought I was going to build a bunch of these. And then I realized I'm just not cut out to manage contractors. Like, I don't enjoy it. And I realized that I could just make a really good profit still, just selling that, buying the land, selling it with owner financing. And then that was really my dominant strategy. I kept my day job as what I was doing. I liquidated most of my real world portfolio and turned a lot of it into private mortgages. And then, that was what I was doing up until the time I ran into fractional real estate. And then I just think it's so interesting, because I had that experience where I was sick and out of work for a long period of time. I got really nervous about having a portfolio of properties that I had to actively manage, that I would hand over to my wife. So I wanted to create the most passive experience possible if that ever happens again. That's why I was doing the private mortgages. Works really well with that. But I think fractional is an even better way to go. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's the story. I mean, there's a lot of stuff along the way that I don't know, probably lots of little stories, but that's the highlights.
So, there's a lot of talk and discussion about the 50-year mortgage possibly right now. But
Yeah.
before we get your thoughts on that, because like I said, you've done a lot in real estate already. But All Nighter Hider is asking question. Joseph, do you feel your legal background helps you comprehend the documents associated with real estate investing? Any big or small legal advantages you have noticed?
It certainly does. A couple of things. One, even though I am a former attorney and I've retired my license, so I'm not an attorney anymore, I still hire an attorney. I have a real estate attorney here in town that I use for all sorts of things. I think it is one of the things that it helped me realize is how much risk people are taking that they don't understand they're taking. And how many, one, like a lot of the people doing different creative strategies. I have seen so many cases of people going to jail over something that, going to jail or being sued or paying large fines over something that they didn't even think was wrong. I think, I've mentioned this on my channel a few times. I knew someone who was teaching a course on creative financing regularly at our local REIA that ended up in jail a year and a half later for doing what she had been teaching the course on. And so, like, I mean, that was a real life experience. But through law school, I took every single real estate class that the law school offered, and went through tons of different cases of people doing these creative type deals. So I learned a lot about that. Learned a lot about the risks. I still, like I said, I still use an attorney for any time. I think if I'm not using the Texas Real Estate Commission's forms for a deal, if I'm doing anything that doesn't fit with those, always still hiring an attorney. Um, it does, I think. So that's where it's helped me the most, is like where I learned to avoid certain risks. But then it certainly uh, has it gave me some ideas about like more creative type deals that you can do, or ways to uh, there's ways to, more than anything about asset protection. There are a lot of interesting ways to protect your assets that um, using debt, for example, using liens on properties, using what they call friendly liens. You have to be careful about how you do it, and it's in a way that you're not. Yeah, I think that's way too deep of a concept, and I shouldn't even have started there. But yeah, I mean, I definitely got a benefit out of it. I wouldn't have gone to law school just to I never thought I was going to be an attorney for a long period of time. I did want to do it to help me. um I guess that decision was kind of motivated by, there were like 3 or 4 different startup ideas in real estate, like sort of doing creative deals, that I ran into like problems when I take it to an attorney and be like, I want to do this, and they'd be like, you can't do that, it's illegal. And like Dodd-Frank came out around that time, and they basically ruined real estate for us little guys. Like they made that crash. Uh, we came out of it so slowly because a lot of the deals that were worked in prior crashes you couldn't do anymore, because all of a sudden they were considered predatory. Um, so I don't know. So running into all these different times where attorneys told me I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I was like, I want to go to law school and figure out how I can do it. And then turns out I think they were right for the most part. I think that almost any creative strategy you can think of has been tried before, and has either been, a lot of them. There's case law now that, okay, you can't do that, or you can, but you have to do it in this narrow way. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think it was beneficial to a certain extent, but I wouldn't do it just for my own real estate investing, if that's where that question is motivated.
Hyder does say, yeah, that's the answer I was looking for. Misunderstood risk. Sounds like a good warning. Thank you, sir. And I'll let you answer this one. Dennis. So Dennis, Joseph has been on Zuber's channel before, more talking about Joseph's story. Then Zuber has had Real Bricks on recently as kind of a regular fractional platform that's on Zuber's channel now. And after that, Joseph has interviewed with Zuber again, kind of his thoughts on Real Bricks and whatnot, right? You've been on his channel after discussing that. But Dennis
Right.
is asking, yeah, he's kind of catching up from the beginning. He's like, why didn't Zuber interview Joseph instead of the guy from Real Bricks, or did he do that already? So maybe you can give the
Yeah.
timeline on that.
Yeah, I think early this year, maybe January or February, I was on his channel and just sort of introduced the idea of fractional real estate investing. I was pretty new to it at the time too, but we had a good discussion. I sort of, laid the framework of this is what it is and whatnot. And then yeah, he has had me on recently after his first or second Real Bricks interview, and we shared, we had a discussion, my thoughts on that platform, and just in general, where the space. Yeah, no, he's been open to having me come back on whenever there's news to talk about the space as well. I think it's really interesting. I think it's clearly going to be a big industry, and there's just not a lot of most of the people that are out there talking about it are people that own a platform themselves, and they're just like talking their book, right? And so I think we need to have more people that are really just digging in on the investor side, that are also out there, talking about it on YouTube. So I'm glad whenever somebody lets me on their channel to talk about it.
I do see Dion stopping by, so just a heads up, he possibly could be going live soon when I wrap things up. So just be on the lookout for that. But there is someone coming in from your channel, so I think a perfect segue for what you just finished discussing. But he says, "Hey, I am super new to fractional real estate. What are the top three platforms I should start with?"
So if you're new to fractional real estate and new to real estate in general, the places where I feel safest sending somebody that I don't think they're going to be tricked in what they're buying are Mogul number one. I think that they're putting out what is um, a very straightforward direct investment in a real estate investment. I think ground floor is another one where you're buying a piece of real estate debt. That they're the most established of all the platforms that I talk about. They've been around 10 plus years. Um, and you're just buying a little piece of a hard money loan, basically. Those are the first two. I have a hard time with a third for a new person, right? I mean, Arrived is sort of the biggest and most established, but you have to be okay with some pretty low returns from them relative to the first two that I mentioned. Although they have recently, if you buy one piece of one of their new IPO deals, and you can just spend $10 and get one share there. In the future, you can then be eligible to buy their secondary offerings, which are like somebody trying to sell theirs. And I did just buy some of those for the first time last night, where you can get them at a discount because somebody else is trying to cash out. So Arrive, but I mean, it is a distant third for me right now.
All right, I do see Earl Cole here, who was on the channel probably about a month or so ago. But he says they can always hop on chat if you guys want to talk about the state of Lofty and what I'm building next. So I don't know if you got some time today. I shot you a link if you want to jump on for a few minutes, maybe share what you're doing. But Earl does say Lofty, Mogul, and Arrive. They seems are the way to go, but each platform has its own pros and cons, and not every platform is for everyone.
Earl
Um,
is really really big on Lofty. He's been on. I think he came on the channel before as well. All right, our Fractional Friday.
yep.
Um, I think that Lofty. The reason I didn't mention it as one is because I think that you really need to understand real estate. You really need to be an active participant in those deals, and I think a lot of people jump on that platform and they're buying not what they think they're buying. Right, a lot of people are confused about what they're actually buying when they get on there. He's someone who's had a lot of success interacting with that platform, with the Lofty platform in a lot of different ways. And so I think if you're someone like him or someone like me, you can make money on there, but it's certainly not. It's just not the first place I'd recommend someone go if they're new to this space overall.
So yeah, so Earl, if you are available for a few minutes, I shot you a link if you want to hop on today for a few minutes. But there's all these questions coming in now because maybe people don't want to hear your response on the 50-year mortgage, Joseph.
Yes, I haven't
But
gotten to that.
maybe you can quickly share your thoughts on the 50-year mortgage.
So I think the 50-year mortgage is going to be um, a couple of things. One, as an investor, I'll use them. Right, I'm perfectly happy with interest only mortgages. I think that uh, for the most part, and I think we talked about this briefly before. I'm not a buy and hold forever person anyway. I think that you maximize your returns with somewhere around a 5-year hold. Right, if you make your money when you buy, you only realize that money when you sell. Right, and so the more often you're able to sell, the quicker you're able to compound the money that you make on your buy. And so um, the longer the amortization, the better off I am as an investor, right? If as long as, and what it's really going to come down to is how much more am I paying in interest, right? Is that interest rate going up dramatically for the longer amortization? And so that's going to be a math problem. It's just like now, like if I can, but when I buy something now, I'll take the longest interest only period that somebody's willing to give me. I don't need that amortization to make the deal work for me. Typically, I'm very often trying to buy it at a discount, right? So I'm not worried about, okay, I need these few dollars to buy down my equity for that margin of safety. And again, I'm not planning to hold forever, and so the difference in time. And even if I were planning to hold forever, I would probably continually refinance. I'd say that. At the same time, I've bought properties all cash before too, so it is. I don't know. I think it depends on the goal, right? Like, but for growth, for investing, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a terrible idea for homeowners. Um, and I think overall, it's going to just make real estate more expensive, right? I mean, it's just, uh, if you go back to way before the New Deal, which is ancient history now, the average mortgage, you put 50% down and it was amortized over 10 years, right? And then then the government got involved in the mortgage lending industry and they created these 30-year mortgages. And lo and behold, real estate has exploded like it just makes it more expensive. And so um, I don't think it's helping the average homeowner. It might help somebody, the people that already own a property and are able to refinance. Maybe it's helping them, a little bit with affordability. The first people to jump in and buy properties using it, okay, they're going to have some advantage, but over time, it's just going to get priced into the market. I really uh, subsidizing the supply side, or I mean, the demand side of our industry is not the problem, right? Like, if you have an affordability problem, supply and demand, right? More demand makes prices go up. More supply is what we need to make it more affordable. Like, whenever we have all this tinkering on the demand side, it drives me crazy.
All right, so this is just how we roll when we do live streams. Sometimes people want to jump on, they want to share what they're doing, but Earl has been on the channel before, so let me bring him in real quick. Hey, so morning, man.
Hello, it's evening for me here
Oh,
in Spain.
all
Morning
right.
in Hawaii. We're all over the world.
Yeah. So
Power of
thanks for
technology.
jumping on. For those that maybe missed the last time you were on, maybe briefly, kind of share who you are and how you're involved in fractional real estate.
Sure thing. Yeah. I have my name's Earl Ko. I graduated from NYU in computer engineering in 2016. Realized that engineering, while fun and is my passion, is not the way to wealth. And learned that it was through real estate investing. So I became a real estate investor, got my first property, which is 724 Third Ave, Waterville on Loft. It's now in Lofty. That I used tons of creative financing to buy that, including like 20 grand from a credit card, and got that property in 2017, at the end of 2017, and the rest was history. From there, 88 Madison came on, and then 90 and a bunch of other properties. Most of them are on Lofty. My Colorado properties haven't made it on there yet, but since then, I have taken over a lot of the properties that was previously managed by Cal slash Yom in the legacy properties portfolio, mainly in Chicago and Cleveland, that were on Lofty, and those have been stabilized for the most part. The rest of them that require too much capital will be sold off. In fact, I have a closing in a few hours, a virtual closing, not well, yeah, a remote closing on Garfield, and a bunch more are in the pipeline, and that they're all under contract. So all good things. We're moving along and cleaning up the marketplace. As far as fractional real estate goes, I've always wanted to share the wealth, and this is there I am. And this is the way forward for democratizing access to real estate investing, whether you have a lot of knowledge or you have very little knowledge.
Joseph, do you have any maybe questions for Earl, or does Earl want to talk about kind of looks like what he's building next, or
Yeah, I'm assuming it's his is it the Earl Coin project that you mentioned that you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, yeah. So we will. Before I go into that, tangentially, one of the existing coins that did launch is EarlDAO, which is basically a lending pool for all of these legacy properties to get the funds needed to be able to bring them back up into compliance, or out their taxes and insurance. So that's basically lending fund, and separately, Earlcoin would be an equity fund. And that could be right now. I mean, it could be used for single asset. It could be a single asset fund where it strategically raises funds to acquire properties, kind of like how I did with Alawa, and then onboard it onto some fractional marketplaces such as Lofty, and then spin it off into its own DAO. Right, that's one way to do it, and then continuously do that, and just keep fractionalizing the world. uh, that's one aspect, and there's been a lot of ideas for what we could do. I think it. What I don't want to do is like be like a traditional fund where I'm like doing everything and like controlling everything. I want to stick with the decentralization, which I know for other platforms is it's like they want the centralization, and it's basically just a traditional fund or a REIT or whatever that is controlled by professionals that know what they're doing. That's all fine and dandy. I know what I'm doing, but I don't want to necessarily go that route, because otherwise I'll just go launch a traditional fund like those already exist.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about in the past is like, well, what is the benefit of you bringing stuff onto Lofty versus just having your own fund once you can raise, if you have that access to capital. So I think it's definitely, you just have to make that choice. Like, hey, I want to do it this way. And what is your main motivation for liking that though? That decentralization. That what's the big appeal for you?
I don't think that. I mean, we hear from like the influencers that are like, oh, passive income, and real estate investing and yada yada. It's like just throw your money at this, but I don't think that we should rely on other people holding our money, and that's been a big overall. That's been a big overall like theme, right? With all the fraud that's going on,
Right.
not just with like property managers, but generally, if it's not, it's the ethos of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin that is not your keys, not your coin.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not your keys, the physical keys to the house, like, okay, I'm a property manager, I manage a lot of properties. I don't actually have any physical keys. I keep them on the property and put them in lock boxes. But like,
Right.
not your keys, not your coins, not your keys, not your houses, not your. If you don't have the password to the bank accounts, it's technically not your money, and we're learning that more and more.
Right.
Throughout this whole year.
And Mark, if it's
So
not clear what he's mentioning when he says we're learning that, there's been a lot of different scandals on Lofty with different PMs, and even Lofty themselves have been accused of, mismanaging reserve funds. I think there's going to be some interesting questions asked in today's live stream that Jerry does. But yeah, I mean, there's been all this different people that have control of funds without a whole bunch of transparency, and we've seen lots of different ways that can go wrong. So that's a good point.
yeah. So not your keys, not your coins. And I know like we don't really have the technology yet. Well, we do have the technology, it just needs to be like assembled, right? The technology is there. The underlying cryptography is there, like the mathematics and all the security needed is there to bridge the gap between the traditional finance space of banks and chartered banks and all that, and also with like fintech companies in between, like Baselane that we use a lot, our F.I.R.E apparently as well, and any of those. It's the custody of funds, I think, is a big factor. And if you have a DAO that is structured in a way where the smart contract rules how the funds are able to move, then you have accountability. You're kind of balancing convenience and security always, right? That's the essence of cybersecurity in general. But with uh with funds that are not able to move without some sort of minimum consensus, I think it can be much more. It can be much more trustless, right? Or you don't need as much trust with the property manager holding the funds. And yeah, I know people are trusting me right now, but I don't want them to trust me
Right.
with the funds.
It is interesting that you've continued to hold people's trust despite not, you haven't done anything to hurt that, but despite them seeing over and over again when they put their trust in someone else, without that accountability, the problems that can arise from it. So it is, you would think that as ecosystem, we would have learned that no, we need these controls. But it does seem like there's a lot of people that are just willing to find who's next that I'm going to trust to hand everything over to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, banks are required to be licensed and have to go through there's a ton of regulation around them because in the olden days, and by that I mean like no, not much more than 100 years ago, banks didn't have to follow those rules, and those rules only came about because people were getting scammed by scam banks, right? And so anytime you have custody and you have trust, there is always a counterparty risk, and in the world of cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance, counterparty risk is like a big no-no. So if you're investing in a REIT, the counterparty risk is the managers of that REIT. If you're investing in well, even if you're investing in a property that you own 100% outright, which is all fine and dandy, if you have the cash to put that and can structure your own, lending and all that, which, that's how a lot of us get started investing in real estate. If you come from the traditional real estate investing space, but you still have to put trust in the property manager who is receiving your rents. Typically, like I know there's some ways where like the funds and the rents can come straight into your account, and the property manager just handles the maintenance and all that. In my opinion, that is a lot more secure. Basically, trust no one. And if you have to trust a property manager, there's always a counterparty risk that that property manager mismanages funds or otherwise, like even the big institutional investors that we talk about with Home River Group and Evernest, and how they've in different ways applied funds from separate entities that are under the Lofty portfolio umbrella, towards other properties that are technically owned by separate entities because they
Right.
treat Lofty as a single customer.
And as far
Um,
as those, I just want to jump in on that. That the traditional property managers, you have to put the trust in. There's a long history of property managers ripping people off, and that's why
mhm,
now they have you make sure they have E&O insurance, and a lot of
mhm.
states now have these funds that you can recover from if you can't recover directly from the property manager. So like that's one of the things that we've seen over and over again. The traditional real estate world has created these sort of additional protections against these things, and then okay, now we're shifting away from that and not necessarily thinking about, okay, why were those things in place? Maybe we need to have them here. So that's one of the things I
Precisely.
really wish Lofty would do a little bit more, is like look at, okay, what were some solutions that existed in real life, and then do we need some of those as guardrails as as we're creating what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, to look, Lofty built some really cool technology,
Yeah.
but they are really not real estate people. I will say that up front. Like, yeah, besides them owning their own houses, perhaps they're not real estate people. I'm gonna continue to shit on them that way.
Right.
They're
Right.
not real estate people, and they're not. I'm not so sure about them being technology people necessarily. Anyway, I mean, but they obviously built the thing, whether or not it's the best it could be. I feel like there's a lot of optimizations that could have been done from the beginning, and they just continue to build off of. At some point you just gotta like flip the whole script and like start from scratch with a new code base. That's why v2.0s exist in
Right.
software. And it's just been like v.0.1.0 forever, and they just keep stacking little things, and attaching things to that existing code base that is no longer relevant or should no longer be relevant. So that's my opinion on the tech side. With the rest of the platforms like Mogul and Arrive, they're a lot more like REITs, right? So they don't have too much of the tech, so there's not so much criticism to put there.
Yeah, or at least a lot of it is like Mogul. I do have a wallet on there, right? It's all my ownership is through the Avalanche blockchain, but it's all like you have to dig into it to know that that's the case, right? It's not right up front, and I'm not controlling it in the same way that I have the direct control of my Lofty wallet.
And I actually like that as well. Lofty has the same principle or like ethos or philosophy in that the blockchain stuff should just be completely under the hood. Like it doesn't matter that you're using PHP or SQL or whatever. It doesn't matter that you're using Algorand and it's not actually a SQL database under the hood. It's better that it's using Algorand or Avalanche or whatever blockchain you want to use. It's better that the databases are public and because we have the transparency that's one of the most important things when it comes to decentralized real estate, decentralized real world assets, any kind, is knowing who the owners are, knowing where the funds are moving, even if it's pseudonymous. Like I was able to tell that, like, hey, there's 3 extra shares of 724 Third Ave floating in circulation because I was able to peek into the database, which is the public blockchain that is Algorand, and see that, hey, you guys accidentally issued 3 shares from the reserve account. You need to put it back. So that way we can verify that, trust but verify, we can verify that the shares that are out there are, that's it, right? There are no naked shares like there could be in the fractional world of equities, stocks, right? There, you don't know how many derivatives are out there
Right.
of any given stock. You don't know that there's, it says that there is, but you have to trust that the brokerage is not lying to you and didn't
Yeah.
issue additional shares for something.
I do see a question coming in from Joseph's channel. It said this was the individual that asked about what the 3 platforms to maybe start with. But it says, thanks for your recommendation. Out of curiosity, I asked ChatGPT and it listed Fundrise because it has the best liquidity and easiest. What's your impression about Fundrise?
So
I've never used them, but yeah, if you have.
Yeah, I haven't either. A couple of things. One, their main product is just a REIT, so it's not true fractional real estate. I believe they do have some fractional products, but you have to be an accredited investor, and it's a large minimum investment. I'm not even sure that still exists, but I know at one point that did on their platform. And so I don't really code typically because my average user, if you're interested in, or average, person that's watching this, if you're interested in fractional estate, it's probably not the type of thing you're looking for.
Right.
For me, if I'm going to make those types of of larger check and it's going to be that I have to be accredited anyway, I'm probably going to find a syndicator that I really can meet in real life. I know them, I trust them, I can go walk the deal with them, and that's where I'm going to be writing bigger checks to. So for truly fractional stuff, I don't think that they fit that bill.
To your point you just mentioned, All Nighter Hider does say Mark Moss recommended to make sure anyone I invest with has a successful track record of investing through at least one market cycle. Multi is better.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I have one of my business partners has and is currently using Fundrise amongst others and found that the returns are good, right? But yeah, it's investing in REITs, it's investing in whatever. If you just have a ton of cash, you don't know what to do with, and you want to park it somewhere, that might be. There's a lot of crowdfunding. The Reg A, ever since the SEC opened up the Reg A, that brings the minimum amount to like $5,000 and could be non-accredited. So there are a lot of options now where to put your money that is in real estate. Fundrise being one of them, and that's the one you hear in the commercials and such. They do have a pretty good marketing budget. Yeah, not like Joseph said, it's not true fractional.
Anything else you guys want to touch on, or if there wasn't, maybe like this person is saying, maybe they are new to the space. I mean, I know Joseph, you already kind of touched on it, but maybe briefly, what is the difference between fractional and a REIT for this person? Maybe they're not even sure what the difference is.
So I mean, the big thing is, a REIT is the typical REIT you invest in. You're buying a small piece of a portfolio, versus fractional real estate. You're buying a small piece of an individual property. You can do due diligence on that individual property. In many cases, you can have some control over what's going to happen with that property. So that's the difference, right? Is I'm not just buying into a pool of investments. And the reason that's important to me, I started my career working as an acquisition analyst for a public REIT. We have a lot of pressure to just buy stuff sometimes. There's certain instances where you just have to, we have acquisitions goals for the year. We have to put out that capital. If we're not trying to shrink the portfolio in any given year, and you're going to have some sales. And so if I have to buy a piece of every single deal that a REIT buys, which is what happens when you own a REIT, then on average, by definition, I'm just getting their average performance. Where if I'm buying a fractional deals on whatever platform and I'm doing the work to dig into those deals, I can get presumably an above average return if I'm doing a good job.
Right. And I know you guys kind of touched on it. So I guess there's going to be a live stream from Lofty, right? Later
Yeah,
today.
I think that's starting right now, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. So we might want to jump off of here because
Yeah.
I do want to watch that and maybe ask some tough questions.
Yeah,
Is it right now or
absolutely.
is it an hour from now? I'm not. The time zones are a little different.
Oh, that's a good question. I could be wrong.
Well, while he's looking, Earl, what do you hope to get away from the live stream with Lofty? Like what kind of maybe answers or hope to get from the live stream that they're presenting today?
I don't know what to expect at this point. I think there's going to be a lot of grilling on what Lofty has been doing, and it's further. Apparently, our F.I.R.E, the bank or the fintech company they were using for their banking services, closed down. I don't have any verification of that, but they've been moving. They've spent the last week moving, last 2 weeks really at this point, moving all of the funds that were in the Dow LLC accounts, bank accounts, which are separate. I have a whole list of all the bank accounts that they used to have in our F.I.R.E and need to port that over and transfer all the funds one by one, basically. So they've been busy with that. I don't know what to expect. I think there's going to be a lot of angry people. We saw over the past few weeks the massive capital flight come out of Lofty, and I mean, frankly, I'm still on their side. I want to encourage people to bring that capital back onto the platform. But I'm not so sure. Well, I definitely can't do it alone. I can try it with the properties that I manage. So I guess we'll just see, and I hope Jerry has some good answers because a lot of people are upset with him, rightfully so, in many cases. And in other cases, yeah, I can see why they would do it the way they did, whatever that might be.
And you're right. It isn't till an hour from now. So I was
Yeah,
doing the time zones wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all the big hot button issues, but you just never know what new complaints people are going to come up with too. And that's what Lofty in their current setup, they need a lot more Earlcos to make it work, right? They need a lot more of these people that have real estate experience, are willing to be transparent in what they're doing, and are, just have that level of conscientiousness around treating the DAO like it's its own separate entity. Like until they're able to attract a lot more people like you, I think we're going to, it's going to continue to be a struggle to maintain trust, because really on that platform, we're not trusting Lofty, right? Like they just are facilitating trades of the pieces, the pieces of property. They're not, and they're trying to not do anything other than that. And so, what I think that they are really missing is going out and finding a whole bunch of people like you, so that now we can go on the platform and trust whoever's running that DAO, right? Because I think it doesn't make sense at the moment. I mean, you have 3 people that between the 3 of you are managing 90% of the platform or something. I mean, I don't know. It maybe not quite that much, but a very large portion of it.
I think more than that, because there's only a few other co-owners that you can name, right? Like think about all the co-owners um,
Yeah, it's
that
a
are
small
that are
number.
there, right? It's a small number of co-owners, and we've had good trusted co-owners now as well. And that's, I think, yeah, Jerry wants to go that way towards more decentralization. I support that as well. It's nice to see that Scout and Pleb have stepped up, and I mean they've already been doing a lot of this anyway, and it also brings in more knowledge and more experience to the entire community, entire portfolio, where people are getting their hand at having their like be having a low risk way to get into investing in real estate and practicing how to be an ethical landlord, if there's such a thing, which I like to think there is, and get the skills needed to provide good customer service and provide clean, safe, affordable housing for people who are our customers, our clients, our tenants, right? And also our clients on the money side, right? These are other people's money that you're playing with. You're playing with properties that are owned by other people, and you have fiduciary duties, and people are not taking that seriously sometimes. And that kind of if you want more people who are uh, ethical real estate investors, so to speak, then you've got to show that the fiduciary duty is upheld. And I do think that Lofty has held up their end to the not the best of their ability, but they're trying. Even with like so far as like it's $1,000 an hour with KNL Gates. I just signed their agreement for Goose, which is 122 Florida Park yesterday, uh, and like that's expensive, but they are fronting this capital to ensure that their investors are protected. But I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't necessarily count on Lofty protecting you, because like you said, don't want to protect you. They don't want to have to do that, but they have to do that because it's an existential risk to the platform that
Right.
bad actors are getting away with this stuff. Um, so I think they are putting their money where their mouth is, in their defense. And yeah, this stuff just takes time, but if we can do more towards keeping the bad actors off in the first place, or limiting the power given to someone
Right.
without if yeah, if power should be like a jail. The more power you have, the more scrutiny you should get, and you shouldn't be able to do everything. Not but in our society it's like the other way around. Oh, you've got a lot of power, you can do whatever you want.
And I think one of the other things they like really need to do is figure out what their what the main benefit is for someone like you to operate on their platform versus not on their platform, and then figure out how to communicate that to the world, right? Because that's why, the only way they're going to get more people like you is really understand like what am I provide, is it that you're just that unique and different of a person, the way you think about the world. And I think maybe that's
Maybe.
part, right? Or maybe it's that you've realized, okay, this is the benefit I get out of the platform,
Yeah.
and you've figured that
I
out on their own, and they're just not communicating that out to everybody else to get more people like you on here. So
I gotta say it's got to be a bit of both. Like I see a lot of the other co-owners that I work with, like Noah Simon, for Nine Country Club North. He's got we're on the same level as far as like philosophy of how this stuff is, and it's like a lot of real estate investors, if they're not on Lofty, they see Lofty and they're like, why would I want to give away my ownership and my
yeah,
voting power and so on and so forth? And
I
I
feel
have this
that way.
own, yeah, it's right. And it's like, I don't know how to tell you, but at some point, you're gonna probably want to sell a portion of your equity,
Right.
right? And like even as simple as like, look, I don't want my wealth, the majority of my wealth, stuck in immovable assets. In Spain we call it inmobiliarias because they're not able to move. And that's the word for real estate, really. So I don't necessarily, I want my wealth to be portable, like Bitcoin.
Mhm.
That's the ultimate portable wealth, and the ultimate unportable wealth is real estate. And I sometimes it's good to have a mix of both. So if you want that mix of both, get into fractional real estate investing, convert your properties into fractionalize your properties, and have it so that you have the option in the future to be able to make your wealth portable, right? To have the liquidity, and we need the liquidity, of course, to come
Right.
on board so that you actually are able to trade. Because if you have such a small market, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I can sell my shares, but it's gonna be like half
Right.
off.
Yeah.
And then what
Today
good
it's
is
much
that?
more theory than practice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's and then of course like the voting rights that come with that. Yeah, of course that's the trade-off. If you are selling ownership, then you actually have to give that person ownership, not in the way of like financial ownership, but I mean like decision ownership, right? I own how and I control how this thing is run. And we people got to take ownership about their investments. Unfortunately, you go to the extreme end and it's like, oh, I've got $50 in this thing and I don't care if it burns down.
Right.
And there's got to be a healthy middle where I mean, we've been doing this in traditional real estate. It's like big syndications even, right?
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, great way to look at it. I just wanted to, yeah. So Dennis, Saul's lot was what we were initially talking about beginning of the stream. Unfortunately, the guest that we were trying to get on couldn't have to cancel at the last minute. Earl was grateful to, thankfully jumping on last minute, talking more about Lofty, and that's what they're gonna be. There's gonna be a live stream on Lofty in probably about 45 minutes. But Earl, thanks for coming on, man. Last minute, you are probably the only consistent person we can count on from the. Joseph is what 0 for 3, mate? Or you're I don't know what your bad.
I've had some quite a few late people. Limas took offense to
Yeah.
that though. He
Oh,
was
that's
on
right.
time when we had him as well.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
yeah, I have had some late people. This is our first actual cancel, or did we have one? No, I think everybody else has just been late. If they haven't, I don't know that we had another
Yeah.
actual cancel, but I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna start making them put down a deposit or something.
But yeah, this is a great space, and I think Earl, you wrapped it up nicely. How like you're saying you wanted a Bitcoin a little bit, movable, portable, and it's a great get into fractional, and you can start for a small amount, right? Learn about it, find which platform works best for you. But everyone, thanks for tuning in. Earl will get you back on. Joseph will schedule another one in a few weeks for our Fractional Friday. And like I said, if you want to know more and see more daily content on fractional real estate, go check out Joseph's channel. He's putting out daily content out there. And everyone have a great weekend coming up. All right, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.